Welcome, dear listeners, to another spine-chilling episode of our scary stories. Today, we delve into the shadows of terror, where nightmares come to life and the unthinkable becomes reality. A family vacation to Pine Hill turns into a horrifying ordeal as a deadly virus sweeps through, turning people into flesh-hungry zombies. The family's struggle to survive takes them on a journey that will test their limits, their love, and their sanity. Prepare yourself, for the road ahead is dark and filled with unspeakable horrors. Hold tight, and let's begin the journey into zombie outbreak in Pine Hill. The Powell family had been dreaming of their vacation to Pine Hill for months. They wanted a peaceful retreat from the city's noise and pollution, and Pine Hill, with its lush forests and crystal-clear lakes, seemed perfect. Gary, the father, sat behind the wheel, humming a tune as he drove the family SUV. Marilyn, his wife, had a smile plastered across her face, her eyes fixed on the passing trees. Their teenage children, Jackson and Amanda, were lost in their own worlds, while little Ben, just 7, was pressed against the window, trying to catch every detail of the scenery. The cabin they rented sat on a hill, nestled between towering pines. As Gary turned into the graveled driveway, the tires crunched, and the aroma of fresh pine needles filled the air. A breeze swirled through the trees, their branches whispering secrets to one another. "Look at this place," Marilyn exclaimed, stepping out of the car. "It's like something out of a fairy tale." They spent the day unpacking, exploring the woods, and laughing around the fireplace. Night fell, and the world outside grew still. The soft hooting of an owl, the distant rustling of woodland creatures, all seemed to assure the Powells that their vacation would be a memorable one. After dinner, they gathered in the living room, the fireplace casting a warm, flickering glow. Little Ben snuggled close to his mother on the sofa, eyelids heavy with sleep. Jackson, the eldest at 17, switched on the TV, intrigued by the rumors of a mysterious illness in the neighboring town. "What's this about, Dad?" he asked, glancing at Gary. "Probably just some sort of flu going around," Gary said dismissively. "Nothing to worry about." "I don't know," Amanda chimed in, her brow furrowed. "The people on the news look really sick." Gary shrugged. "We're here to relax, not fret over some bug." They soon settled into their rooms, the night quiet except for the faint sounds of the forest. Yet, unbeknownst to the Powells, the town below was anything but tranquil. In Pine Hill, shadows lengthened, and a sense of unease settled over the streets. Dogs howled, their cries echoing in the wind, and locals exchanged anxious glances. Strange stories had been filtering in, and though many dismissed them as mere gossip, others were not so sure. At the local diner, the talk turned from weather to the illness that had gripped the neighboring town. "It's not just a flu," said the waitress, Clara, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "I heard from my cousin's friend that people are acting crazy, attacking each other." A customer, Mr. Harris, shook his head. "That's nonsense, Clara. Just people's imagination getting the best of them." "Is it?" she asked, her eyes wide with fear. "Then why has the next town over been quarantined? Why are they sending in the National Guard?" The room fell silent, and the only sound was the ticking of the diner's neon clock. Up in their cabin, the Powell family slept, blissfully unaware of the growing storm. But the world they knew was changing, shifting beneath them, and soon they would be thrust into a nightmare from which there was no escape. Morning in Pine Hill was usually a time of gentle awakenings, of birdsong and fresh breezes. But on this day, something was off. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting. The Powell family, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension, prepared for a day at the local festival. Gary was busy flipping pancakes, the enticing smell filling the cabin. Marilyn organized a picnic basket, while the children chattered excitedly about the games and rides. "We should try the haunted house first," Amanda said, eyes sparkling. "I bet it's not even scary," Jackson teased. Little Ben looked up, his face pale. "I don't like haunted houses." "Don't worry, champ," Gary reassured him. "We'll stick together." They drove down to Pine Hill, noticing how the roads were emptier than usual. Shops had closed, signs hanging, and the people they did see seemed hurried, their eyes darting, faces tight with worry. Upon reaching the festival, they found it subdued, the laughter forced, the music jarring. The once vibrant town square seemed dulled, the colors faded. They tried to enjoy themselves, but the mood was contagious. The games felt hollow, the prizes meaningless. They wandered from stall to stall, their enthusiasm waning. Jackson pulled his father aside. "Dad, something's wrong." People are acting strange. Gary looked around, finally sensing the unease. Let's not jump to conclusions. It could be anything. But the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. Then the unthinkable happened. In a dark alley beside the festival, a scream pierced the air. The Powells froze, their hearts pounding, eyes wide. "Stay here," Gary ordered, rushing toward the sound. The others followed, curiosity and fear mingling. They rounded the corner and stumbled upon a horrifying scene. A man, his face twisted and eyes wild, was attacking another, his teeth gnashing. "Get away from him," Gary yelled, pulling the attacker off. The man's face was a mask of rage, saliva dripping from his mouth. He lunged at Gary, who dodged just in time. "People are turning into monsters," a woman cried, her voice breaking. The crowd began to panic, screams filling the air. The Powells grabbed each other, terror flooding their veins. "We need to get out of here," Marilyn whispered, her voice trembling. They ran back to the car, their minds reeling. The world had tilted on its axis, and nothing made sense anymore. The rumors were true, the sickness was real, and it was here, in Pine Hill. As they sped away, the town unraveling behind them, they knew that their idyllic vacation had turned into a nightmare. The virus was spreading, chaos was taking hold, and the fight for survival had begun. They reached the cabin, the familiar sight now tainted with fear. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that seemed to reach for them, and the night held a promise of terror they could not yet comprehend. The family huddled together, uncertainty and dread hanging in the air, knowing that they were trapped in a place they had once sought for peace. The roads were blocked, escape impossible, and Pine Hill, once a haven, had become a prison. They locked the doors, pulled the curtains, and watched the news, the anchor's voice shaky as he reported the outbreak. "We're safe here," Gary insisted, trying to sound convincing. But his eyes betrayed him, and they all knew that safety was an illusion. Outside, the wind howled, the trees groaned, and Pine Hill succumbed to a darkness deeper than night. Something had awakened, something relentless and hungry, and it was only just beginning. A silence settled over the cabin, punctuated only by the distant howls and mysterious rustlings of the forest. The Powells watched the news in growing horror as the situation in Pine Hill escalated. Roads were closed, communication cut off, and the once peaceful town transformed into a place of terror. They sat together, a family united by fear, each lost in thoughts of what lay ahead. Jackson's fingers tapped nervously on the armrest. Amanda hugged her knees to her chest, and little Ben clung to Marilyn, his eyes wide and filled with confusion. "We can't stay here," Gary finally broke the silence, his voice strained. "We're cut off," Marilyn replied, her voice quivering. "Where would we go?" "We'll figure it out," he insisted. "We can't wait for them to reach us." The room filled with the sounds of the forest, the creaking of branches, the mysterious whispers of the wind, each noise magnifying their fear. Pine Hill had become a living nightmare, and they were trapped within it. Determined to take control, Gary began to gather supplies. Food, water, flashlights, and a first aid kit filled their bags. Jackson found an old baseball bat, Amanda a sturdy kitchen knife. They would defend themselves if need be. As night deepened, the forest seemed to close in around them, shadows lengthening and twisting into grotesque shapes. The news reports grew grimmer, images of chaos and despair flickering across the screen. They decided to keep watch in shifts, their sleep troubled by nightmares and the haunting sounds outside. The hours dragged on, each tick of the clock a reminder of their isolation. In the dead of night, Amanda's shift, a noise broke the silence, a distant moan, human yet not, a sound that sent chills down her spine. She woke the others, her finger to her lips, her eyes wide with terror. They listened, hearts pounding, as the moans grew closer, a symphony of despair. Then came the sounds of shuffling, of dragging feet, the unmistakable signs of the infected. "They're here," Jackson whispered, his voice breaking. They gathered by the windows, peering into the darkness, the only light the dim glow of the moon. Shapes moved between the trees, stumbling, reaching, their eyes empty and soulless. Little Ben began to cry, his sobs muffled by Marilyn's hand. "We have to leave," Gary said, determination in his voice. They moved quickly, grabbing their bags, each knowing that time was against them. The infected were drawn to noise, to life, and they were closing in. They crept out the back door, the night air cold and biting, the forest a maze of shadows and danger. The infected moaned behind them, their presence a relentless reminder of the horror that had befallen Pine Hill. They made their way through the woods, the ground uneven, branches reaching out like gnarled hands. Every sound, every rustle of leaves sent them into a panic, their minds playing tricks on them. Hours passed, their progress slow and fraught with peril. Exhaustion set in, their bodies aching, their minds numb with fear. Finally, they stumbled upon an abandoned farmhouse, its windows shattered, its doors hanging off the hinges. It was a temporary sanctuary, a place to rest before they continued their desperate flight from the terror that had consumed their world. They settled in, barricading the doors and windows, the silence of the night heavy and oppressive. Outside, Pine Hill continued its descent into madness, the infected wandering, ever hungry, ever searching. And as the Powell family huddled together, each lost in thoughts of what they had left behind and the unknown dangers that lay ahead, they knew that their fight for survival had only just begun. The night's grasp was relentless, and they were ensnared within it, prisoners of a horror they could neither understand nor escape. Dawn found the Powell family huddled in the farmhouse, their faces drawn and eyes haunted. The night's terrors weighed heavily on them, and the realization that Pine Hill had become a place of death was a burden they struggled to bear. Jackson's face was pale, his bravado replaced by fear. Amanda's hands shook as she sipped cold water, her eyes darting at every creak of the old building. Little Ben clung to his mother, his innocence shattered by sights no child should see. "I've found a map," Gary said, his voice cracking the heavy silence. "There's a route through the forest that leads to the next town. It's our best chance." They stared at him, their minds slow to process, the weight of their situation pressing down on them. "Can we make it?" Marilyn asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have to try," Gary replied, determination in his eyes. They set out again, the farmhouse fading into the distance, a stark symbol of a world gone mad. The forest seemed to watch them, its secrets hidden in shadows, its whispers carried on the wind. The path was treacherous, the undergrowth thick and unyielding. They stumbled and fell, their bodies bruised and battered, their spirits fraying. Each step was a battle, each breath a victory. They were a family changed, no longer bound by love and joy but by fear and desperation. The smiles and laughter of their vacation were distant memories, replaced by grim determination and haunted eyes. The day wore on, the sun hidden behind clouds, the air heavy with the threat of rain. They spoke little, each lost in their thoughts, their fears, their nightmares. Then a sound broke the silence, a rustle in the underbrush, a snap of a twig. They froze, their hearts in their throats, their eyes wide with terror. "It's them," Amanda whispered, her voice trembling. "No," Gary said, his voice firm. "It's something else." They moved closer, curiosity overcoming fear, and stumbled upon a sight that took their breath away. A deer, its eyes wild and its body trembling, was caught in a trap, its leg broken and bloody. "We have to help it," Amanda said, tears in her eyes. "We can't," Gary replied, his voice cold. "We have to keep moving." "No," Amanda insisted, her voice rising. "We can't leave it." The family watched, torn between compassion and survival, their bonds tested by a world gone mad. "Amanda's right," Marilyn said, her voice soft. "We have to help." With grim determination, they freed the deer, its eyes filled with gratitude and pain, its freedom a symbol of hope in a world filled with darkness. They continued on, their bodies weary, their souls heavy. The path seemed endless, the forest unyielding, their goal distant and unattainable. Night fell again, and they found shelter in a cave, the darkness a cloak, the silence a tomb. They sat together, a family united and divided, their bonds both strengthened and frayed. Outside, the forest whispered its secrets, the wind carried the distant moans of the infected, and the world continued its descent into chaos. They fell into a troubled sleep, their dreams filled with terror and despair, their waking hours a nightmare they could not escape. And as they lay in each other's arms, the unknown dangers of the forest all around them, they knew that they were alone, adrift in a world that had lost its way, a family struggling to find themselves in a place where nothing made sense, where fear ruled, and hope was a distant, fleeting dream. The world was a blur of fear and uncertainty as the Powell family trudged through the forest. The once vibrant colors of nature now seemed muted, twisted into grotesque shapes by the terror that gripped them. Every rustle of leaves, every distant cry of an animal, seemed a harbinger of doom. Gary led the way, his jaw set in grim determination. Marilyn's eyes were hollow, her mind teetering on the brink of despair. Jackson's youthful vigor had been replaced by a weary resignation, and Amanda's resolve was tempered by a growing sense of hopelessness. Little Ben, bewildered and scared, looked to his family for comfort, but found only the shadows of the people he once knew. As the hours wore on, their journey became a monotonous nightmare. Hunger gnawed at their bellies, thirst parched their throats, and exhaustion sapped their strength. The path seemed to twist and turn, leading them in circles, mocking their desperation. "We're lost," Amanda finally voiced what they all feared, her voice breaking. "No," Gary insisted, though doubt crept into his voice. "We'll find our way." The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees towering overhead like judgmental sentinels. They were trespassers in a world gone mad, and the wilderness did not welcome them. A sudden rainstorm drenched them, the cold water a cruel reminder of their vulnerability. They sought shelter under the thick canopy of trees, their clothes clinging to their bodies, their skin pruned and chilled. "We can't go on like this," Marilyn sobbed, her voice lost in the sound of rain. "We have to," Gary said, though his voice lacked conviction. They sat in silence, the rain a relentless drumbeat, their hearts heavy with despair. "We're not going to make it, are we?" Jackson asked, his voice small. "We will," Gary replied, but his eyes were filled with doubt. They huddled together, a family on the brink, their bonds stretched thin by terror and desperation. The storm passed, and they resumed their journey, the forest a maze of uncertainty, the path a cruel game of deception. They stumbled and fell, their bodies battered, their spirits broken. And then, when hope seemed lost, a sound reached their ears, a distant hum of civilization, a beacon in the wilderness. "A road," Gary cried, his voice filled with relief. They broke into a run, their legs protesting, their hearts pounding. The road was a lifeline, a chance at salvation. They reached it, their breath ragged, their faces flushed with exhaustion and hope. It was a small highway, abandoned and overgrown, but it was a sign of life, a path to safety. "We've made it," Amanda said, her voice filled with disbelief. "We're not safe yet," Gary warned, his eyes scanning the horizon. "We need to find help." They followed the road, their steps fueled by a newfound hope. The world seemed to brighten, the forest losing its grip on their souls. They walked for miles, the road stretching on, the promise of safety and elusive dream. The sun began to set, the shadows lengthening, the forest reclaiming its dominion. Then, as night began to fall, they stumbled upon a sight that sent a chill down their spines. A car, abandoned and overgrown, its windows shattered, its doors ajar. Inside, a grim tableau awaited them. The remnants of a family, their faces twisted in terror, their bodies ravaged by the infected. The reality of their situation hit them like a physical blow. They were not safe. The horror of Pine Hill had spread, the infected wandering, relentless in their hunger. They backed away, their minds reeling, their hope shattered. The night closed in, the forest a tomb, the road a path to nowhere. They were lost, adrift in a world that had turned against them, a family on desperation's edge, teetering on the brink of madness. And as the darkness swallowed them, they knew that their journey had only just begun, their fight for survival a never-ending nightmare, their hope a fleeting illusion. The world had changed, and they were changed with it, prisoners of fear, captives of a terror they could neither understand nor escape. The night was a suffocating blanket, full of unseen horrors and untold fears. The Powell family moved cautiously along the abandoned highway, the silence punctuated only by their ragged breaths and the distant howls of unknown creatures. Each step seemed a betrayal of safety, each heartbeat a reminder of their vulnerability. Jackson's face was set, a mask of determination. Amanda's eyes were wide, her mind a whirl of conflicting emotions. Little Ben's hand was clutched tightly by his mother, his face buried in her side, seeking comfort in a world gone awry. Gary's grip on the makeshift weapon was firm, his eyes scanning the darkness, his mind on high alert. They were a family transformed, no longer the carefree vacationers of days gone by, but survivors, warriors, forged in the crucible of terror. Hours slipped away as they followed the highway, the monotony broken only by the occasional sign of the infected's grim work. Abandoned cars, shattered windows, remnants of lives torn apart. The evidence of humanity's downfall was all around them, a grim testament to the fragility of civilization. As the first rays of dawn broke the horizon, a glimmer of hope sparked within them. The world was not entirely lost. There was still beauty, still life, still a chance for redemption. They came upon a small town, its buildings standing tall, its streets eerily quiet. The infected were nowhere to be seen, the chaos of Pine Hill a distant memory. "We need to be careful," Gary warned, his voice hushed. "We don't know what's here." They moved cautiously, eyes darting, ears straining, hearts pounding. The town was a ghost of its former self, its soul hidden behind boarded windows and barricaded doors. Then a sound broke the silence, a voice, human and alive. They froze, their minds struggling to process the reality of human contact. "Who's there?" The voice called, fear and hope mingling in the words. "We're survivors," Gary called back, his voice strong. "We need help." A door creaked open and a face appeared, eyes wide with disbelief and relief. The woman was middle-aged, her face lined with worry, her eyes filled with kindness. "Come in," she said, her voice trembling. "You're safe here." They stepped inside, the weight of their journey lifted, the bonds of their family strengthened by their shared ordeal. The woman's name was Sarah, and she was the town's doctor. She had turned her home into a sanctuary, a place of hope in a world consumed by darkness. "We're all that's left," she explained, her voice filled with sorrow. "The rest were taken by the infected or fled." They shared their story, their words a testament to their strength, their survival a beacon of hope. "We'll stay here," Gary said, his voice filled with conviction. "We'll rebuild." The family embraced, their love a shield against the darkness, their determination a path to redemption. The world had changed, but they were unchanged, their essence untouched by the horrors they had faced. They were still a family, bound by love, guided by hope, strengthened by courage. As they settled into their new home, the town a blank canvas, their future unwritten, they knew that they had a purpose, a reason to fight, a chance to reclaim what was lost. The road to redemption was long and fraught with danger, but they were ready, their hearts full, their minds clear. They were survivors, warriors, a family united in love and purpose, a beacon of hope in a world consumed by darkness. They were the light, the hope, the redemption, and they were just getting started. Thank you for joining us on this terrifying journey through Pine Hill's nightmarish landscape. We hope you found it a thrilling, if not unsettling, experience. The world may change, horrors may unfold, but stories like these remind us of our resilience, our humanity, and our unbreakable bonds. Keep the lights on, and remember, the stories we tell may be closer to reality than you think. Until next time, sleep well, dear listeners, and keep an eye on those shadows. This is our Scary Stories signing off for tonight.